What is up? Welcome back to Hear Me Out Sports, where we are covering Week 8 tight ends. Let's run it. All right, before we get into covering Week 8 tight ends, we're going to cover Week 7. So, not too shabby. We got 80% on the week, and I'll take that. Some of the hits, Evan Ingram, he did pretty good. Pat Freiermuth, he made a big comeback, and then we said bench New England's tight ends, and it was actually a smart decision, even though they came off a good game. Some of the close calls, none of which would have actually added to our percentage, only would have taken away from it. But these are all guys who came within half a point, just for all those who are struggling, might need a tight end. Some of the misses, though, Kylan Granson, I was a little bit high on him. I thought he could be starting to have a good showing, but that did not pan out. Greg Dulcich, if you watched the video last week, I told you I want to start him. I did not, just because of how new he is. So I was a little bit concerned. I thought that there could be some variability there. And then Taysom Hill, he is variability. I don't know how to predict him week to week, so we'll move forward with that. Week 8 buys, though, we have the Chiefs and the Chargers. That could be a huge hit to you with people like Travis Kelce and Gerald Everett, but you got to do what you got to do, right? We'll try to give you some names, though, to make up for those losses that you might have and move forward and still score some big points. Now, Week 1, where we have Baltimore Ravens versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have Mark Andrews. He's always a start. It's also an all right matchup with Bucs giving up 11.5 points per game. They had a horrible showing against the Panthers last week. And he is the second most targeted tight end and the second rate tight end. So it's hard to argue with that. Tampa Bay, it's a fringe here for me for Cade Otton. He's actually had some decent games, especially since he's kind of the main tight end there with some injury there. I don't think he'll repeat, though, in Week 7, and I do want to start him in the future, but I think that's going to be more matchup dependent more than anything. Moving on to Broncos versus Jaguars, where we got Greg Dulcich versus Evan Ingram. I have them both in the start column. This one is actually going to be my matchup of the week, just because I think that these are two very much so mid-tier tight ends who could be on the rise and could be breaking that 10-point threshold on a more consistent basis. Denver, again, he's a fringe for me just because how new he is. There's not a lot of security there. But he got 9 targets, and he was 2 for 2 on the games he's played so far and breaking that threshold. But let's keep in mind that this is a tough Jacksonville defense at number 7, only allowing 6.8 points per game. On the other side, though, you got a good target share for Evan Ingram as well. He's averaging just over 7 targets per game for the last 3 games specifically. And he's just becoming more relevant in this offense, which is nice to see. Trevor Lawrence has the ability, so as long as he's getting targets, I think that there's going to be points there. He's broken the threshold. He's broken the threshold, even though he was only 4-7 in that last game. If he catches a couple of passes, that's all just bonus points. And again, fringe though, because Denver actually only allows 8.9 points per game to opposing tight ends. So for this one, I think I'm gonna give it to Greg Dulcich in this matchup. I think he's gonna come out with higher points. Let's move on now to Carolina Panthers versus the Atlanta Falcons. Tommy Tremble, he actually had a very good game last time. I don't think Carolina can repeat the game they had last week because they're able to support 4 targets, which is kind of ridiculous. They're able to support both running backs, a tight end, DJ Moore, and so I don't see that being repeatable. And I got them both in the bench column. We got Kyle Pitts on the other end. He continues to disappoint. Atlanta is just a run first, both from the QB and running back perspective. They're a run first offense. And there's only 13 pass attempts last week. You can't really get many big points with that if you are a tight end. Chicago Bears versus Dallas Cowboys. Cole Kmet, still 0% each week. Continues to not hit that threshold. He's had 4 less targets in every game and has never broken 45 yards. And he has no TDs on the season. So, with him also going up against a tough defense, I think that this is an easy sit. For Dallas, I do like Dalton Schultz, but I have him as a fringe. Let's say the positive first. He's better with Dak under center. But on the negative side, he didn't even break on week 7 the threshold, and he was going against the Detroit Lions, which that should have been an easy matchup. Chicago's defense is a lot better than the Detroit Lions, and they're only giving up 5.7 points to opposing tight ends. Moving on to Miami Dolphins versus the Detroit Lions. We got Mike Gesicki in the bench column, and we got TJ Hawkinson in the bench column. Miami, I think he's a fringe. He does have high, big play potential. And as we mentioned earlier, Detroit Lions, their defense is awful. But I don't know. I don't think Miami can sport this many targets. They have so many receivers there. They have an all right running core. And I just think they're going to be up on the scoreboard, so then they're going to try to run out the clock. Detroit Lions, though, with Amon-Ra is going to be back. He didn't even suffer a concussion. I think that their new concussion protocol is absolutely ridiculous, but he's going to be back. Swift will probably be back, and so I think that TJ Hawkinson isn't going to have as much attention on him from the quarterback perspective. Moving on to Arizona Cardinals versus Minnesota Vikings. Zach Ertz. I have him in the start column. I'm a little bit worried. Listen, he didn't break the threshold last week, but he's still a good option when he doesn't break it. But with DeAndre Hopkins back and taking a lot of that target share, I don't think he's going to be as high. His ceiling is definitely lower. We'll just put it that way. We also have Robbie Anderson, who has made an appearance in Arizona, and once he learns the playbook and is more comfortable there, that could eat out of his targets too. And then, depending on when Marquise Brown's returns, that could eat out of his targets, and that would make him a sit in my book. But because Marquise Brown is benched with injury, I got to start Zach Ertz and see how he does one more week with DeAndre Hopkins. Minnesota, fringe here with Irv Smith. He's only 2 for 6. He's only broken 2 weeks that threshold out of the 6 weeks that he's played, and one of those was saved by a touchdown. So it wasn't even like a big, I don't know. It came from a big play. He still got 7 targets still in week 6, which is his last game. And this is a terrible Arizona defense. They're number 31 overall, giving up over 16 points to opposing tight ends. So, for that reason mainly, I got Irv Smith in start column because I know he can get targeted and I know he can do stuff with it. Heading to New Orleans, where you got the Raiders versus the Saints. Darren Waller continues to disappoint, and Foster Moreau, he's kind of covering for Darren Waller. Devontae Adams is the main target, and again, a little worried about injury with Darren Waller. New Orleans has a good defense. They're number 2 against tight end specifically, giving up only 5 points per game. On New Orleans side, against my better judgment, I have Taysom Hill in the start column. It's just a terrible Las Vegas defense, giving up 14 points per game to opposing tight ends. But let's keep in mind that Taysom Hill isn't really a tight end, so that number doesn't mean too much. And he is being used more frequently, so that's kind of why I have him in the start column. I think that they're finding their groove with him in some wildcat formations and some other plays like that. So I do think that he is big play dependent, but I also think he's got big play potential. So that's why I have him there. He's a fringe, though. Now we got the Patriots versus the Jets. Jonas Smith and Hunter Henry. Again, they had a good week 6, but I told you sit them, and they had not a great week 7. They come out for 3 catches. I think Henry is a better option here based off snap count. But it was interesting weather conditions last week, so I'll give him a little pass. And I think there's some unsurety at the quarterback position. You got Bailey Zappi, who's kind of fighting for that starting spot, and New England fans kind of want him there too. So I foresee Bailey Zappi being the starter there in the future. It might take a couple more games to solidify that, but we'll have to see. On New York side, Tyler Conklin, he's kind of been screwed as soon as Zach Wilson stepped into the starting spot. He doesn't get the same amount of love. But he has seen more targets kind of throughout the weeks that he's been with Zach Wilson, with his most coming in week 7. But he still it's it for me because it just isn't there right now. Steelers versus Eagles. We got Pat Freiermuth versus Dallas Goedert in this matchup. Pat Freiermuth, he had a great return game. 9 targets for 75 yards. He was first in receiving yards and catches for his team. And he was posting good numbers even without a touchdown. So that is a very safe option. And he's going to have an all right matchup against a mid-tier defense in the Eagles. They're not bad by any means, but they're not just absolutely stumping the tight ends either. On Philadelphia side, I think that Dallas Goedert is a solid target for Hurts, so that's why I kind of have him in that start column. And he averages 11.2.8 points per game, which is safe. It's over our threshold. He needs to sort out the drops though. There's a few too many there. But it is a good Pittsburgh defense at number 6, only allowing 6.7 points per game. So that's a little bit of a worry for me, but he's going to be there. He's kind of a little bit of a fringe for me. I don't think he has huge ceiling, but he usually is consistent. All right, heading over to Houston, not Houston, where we got the Titans versus the Texans. Tennessee averages only 3.4 points per game here with Austin Hooper. They're just not a passing team. The Titans are 0% on the year, and over the last, I guess, in this throughout the season, each of these guys has played in 6 games, and only one of them has broken the threshold, and he's only done it once. So they're 1 for 12 in that regard. Houston Texans also, we got Jordan Akins and Brevin Jordan. Akins, I think, has more potential, but this is a moderate. I don't know. I think that this is a moderate defense they're going to be going against, and it's going to give them enough trouble that I don't think they're going to break that 10 points. And I think they're also splitting snaps there. Moving on to Colts versus Commanders. We got Logan Thomas, Armani Rogers, John Bates, Kylan Granson, Mo Ali Cox, Jelani Woods. So here's the thing. None are great options, just in general. Logan Thomas is the best option, but we need to see more of a connection with Taylor Heineke. And there's just, I don't know, there's not a lot of good tight end targets there. Indianapolis, on the other hand, man, I tried starting Kylan Granson, and there's just nothing there. They're not getting the looks they need in order to score some big points. I think Granson is the best decision out of those 3. Most targets, most yards, and he's more consistent. But he does have less big play potential, so that's something to keep in mind. Let's head over to Los Angeles now, where we got the 49ers versus the Rams. George Kittle, he's a start for me. He had a big week 7 with 6 completions out of his 9 targets for 98 yards and a touchdown. His involvement is increasing, and with his left tackle back, he might be switching from more of that blocker role to more of that receiver role. But I am a little bit worried about Christian McCaffrey eating it away from his ceiling and from his potential in general, because, I mean, Christian McCaffrey is such that you could just hit him and pass to him coming on a swing or something like that, and that could be stealing touchdowns, that could be stealing reps, targets, everything from George Kittle. But I'm going to start him again. LA Rams, man, Tyler Higbee, he did well against the 49ers in his first matchup. I was concerned about starting him this week, but I am going to keep him started, only because I hope that the bye week helped him recover with his ankle injury. If he is at full health, I think that he's going to be able to break that 10 points, but we'll have to look into the injury report each day as we get closer to the game. Heading over now to Seattle, where we got the Giants versus the Seahawks. Chris Myrick, he's going to be kind of taking some of those reps, as well as Tanner Hudson with Bellinger out. Bellinger wasn't even getting 8.2. He was getting 8.2 points per game, and now you have both the backups, so I just don't trust these two, and I think they're going to be splitting time, which means they're splitting points. But let's keep in mind that Seattle Seahawks, they are ranked number 32 as far as defenses go against side ends, giving up over 18, almost 19 points per game, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I still don't feel comfortable starting them. So we're heading over to the other side, where we got, again, this whole tripanionship, this whole combo over here. I don't like the 3-way split. They all get points, and that's near impossible to break 10 points unless you get a touchdown, and even then, it's still up in the air. Now, let's head over to Buffalo Bills versus the Green Bay Packers. Robert Tonyan, sometimes I do want to start him. I do think he is a decent option. He's averaging 8.73 points per game, but he's only broken the threshold 2 of the 7 weeks. And this is a tough defense he's going against. On Buffalo's side, you got Dawson Knox. This season, he's kind of relied on big plays. There's just too many mouths to feed in Buffalo, and with Green Bay's defense being number 3 against the tight end, giving up about 5 points per game, I don't trust that at all. Heading over to Cleveland, where we got the Bengals versus the Browns. Hayden Hurst. I do want to start him. But again, I think that there are too many mouths to feed. All of those receivers, they're very great options. You had Tyler Boyd break out last week, and it's just kind of who's going to break out in each week. Some weeks it's T. Higgins, some weeks it's Jamar Chase. So there's too many targets there. Cleveland, their defense is good against tight end, but not against the receiver. So I think that they're going to be giving up more of those receiver points. That's why I put Hayden Hurst in the sit column. On Cleveland Brown side, Njoku is out. He did well, but I don't think Bryant or Brown is a great target, and there's just injury concern all around there in Cleveland. Now, that kind of wraps us up. I just want to quickly cover, I'm going to go back through and tell you some of the people who, if you're hurting and you need someone, maybe you could play them instead. Hayden Hurst, as we just covered, I think he's a decent option. Robert Tonyan, I'd even put in there. As we continue to go through, Kylan Granson, I'm hesitant on saying anything about him, so he's kind of not horrible, but he's not great as far as the option goes. Hunter Henry, I'd even put in there. I'll put Darren Waller in that, possibly pick up. He could help. That's obviously pending how he's feeling as far as injuries concerned. And Mike Gesicki, I think he could be a very good option here. Dalton Schultz with Dak Prescott under center. Again, he could be a decent option. And then lastly, Cade Otton from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's proven to be all right when he's by himself. So that's my synopsis for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you hate. Debate with us. I mean, we welcome comments left and right. And we will catch you, I guess, on Thursday when we drop a quarterback video. And so I'll see you then.